Venezuela, home to the world's largest proven oil reserves, has been going through a spiraling political and economic crisis in recent years. The country is in its seventh year of recession, one of the steepest ever recorded in the world. Its economy is under crippling U.S. sanctions and now had to contend with the fallout from the pandemic. The economic situation remains dire. Frequent power outages have plunged Venezuela into darkness, chronic shortage of food supplies, and punishing hyperinflation. The past years have been exceptionally tough for the country. How the country recover from the crisis? What sort of governance will they take to carry out good policies? For answers, I try to get some perspectives from Oscar Figuera, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of that country. Here's his perspectives. I remember last time when we were trying to connect with one another, there was a big power problem inside your country because of the U.S. sanctions against Venezuela. Tell me more about how you are functioning, your country, under such circumstances.
Bueno, hay una realidad que se ha.
There is a reality that has settled in Venezuela and is related to the legality of the unilateral measures that the United States government, since the Obama administration, decided to impose on our country by declaring that Venezuela is a threat to the national security of the United States and apply an executive order that, under Trump, directly affected the Venezuelan economy. This has to do with the use of exchange, of commercialization, of acquisition of credits at an international level, of purchase of necessary products for the country's industry.
De créditos a nivel internacional, de compra de productos necesarios para la industria.
So the complete picture is a consequence of those measures from the U.S. administration which are related to imposing sanctions. These we reject because we do not recognize the extraterritoriality of the laws of the U.S. government, of U.S. imperialism, and therefore we condemn them and reject them. And the Communist Party of Venezuela is part of the forces that we have fully mobilized in the face of any threat or aggression that may be carried out against our country. So, the illegal, unilateral, and coercive measures of the U.S. government, the U.S. administration, has effectively caused significant damage to our country's economy and affect us not only in the electricity sector, but also in other important areas such as oil, gas, and food. In general, everything that implies the acquisition of goods, products, commerce, financial and economic relations at a general level. This conduct of aggression, coercion, interference, disrespect for the sovereignty and self-determination of peoples is condemned by the Communist Party of Venezuela.
De injerencia, de irrespeto a la soberanía y a la autodeterminación de los pueblos es condenada por el Partido Comunista de Venezuela.
Were you disappointed that the Biden administration, after coming into the office for more than 5 months, still continued the policies that were designed by the Trump administration?
Bueno, nosotros partimos de una caracterización que hacemos de la administración.
Well, we see from a characterization that we make of the United States government and institutions. The U.S. state is an instrument at the service of the big capital, large transnational corporations, or large multinational corporations. The U.S. government and institutions seek to defend the interests of big capital at the international level.
Un aparato para defender a nivel internacional los intereses del gran capital.
So administrations, whether Democrat or Republican, in general, maintain a policy in this regard. They can maintain different tactical maneuvers, a more confrontational discourse in the case of Republicans, or more sweetened in the case of Democrats, but they all defend the hegemony and domination objectives of U.S. imperialism. That is the perception of the Communist Party of Venezuela.
Esa es la apreciación del Partido Comunista de Venezuela.
One of the things we all have to focus on is how to bring better life to people. Of course, your country, my country, has very different circumstances, but anti-poverty campaign is very important. Mr. Figuera, tell me more about how you are, together with your party members, trying to make as much effort as possible in that regard?
Bueno, efectivamente la situación.
Well, indeed, the situation of the People's Republic of China and the situation of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela are different due to both their material base and development and the empowerment of the productive forces. Obviously, China has achieved high levels of development, which today places the economy of the People's Republic of China in the first level of world development and in competition with the large economies that have exercised hegemony and that had and continue to have imperialist practices worldwide. So, the People's Republic of China has been fulfilling a really important function with its approach that allows the incorporation of other economies and contributes to the participation of other countries in the development process in the world.
De otros países en el proceso de desarrollo a nivel mundial.
The Venezuelan case is more complex in terms of our difficulties. Regardless of the fact that the People's Republic of China has, according to my latest data, 1.45 billion citizens, regardless of the fact that this is an immense population, it is a material base that the Chinese Revolution has built, which has allowed for an accelerated leap and the improvement of the quality of life of the Chinese people. In the Venezuelan case, the situation has been different because the Venezuelan economy has been an oil-dependent economy. We characterize it, the Communist Party, as a single export and multi-import economy with a great dependence on international imports. Its income has been generated mainly through the export of oil.
Han sido generados fundamentalmente por la vía de la exportación de petróleos.
I am very sympathetic and also have huge empathy toward your circumstances, particularly at a time when your country has to function because of the COVID-19 challenge. Tell me more about the latest situation in Venezuela and how are you having access to prevention and control?
Bueno, estos son tiempos, como usted lo ha señalado.
These are times, as you have pointed out, that allow countries to build their internal capacities, their creativity, and based on a centralized plan, to attack the weaknesses of their own development and advance in overcoming the reality imposed by these development weaknesses and by the unilateral, coercive measures of external aggression. This is fundamental, and it is an element on which the Venezuelan approach must be taken. It is one of the approaches that the Communist Party of Venezuela has undertaken, the need to advance in a planned development process where primary production, which is related to food and the guarantee of food sovereignty, must play a very important role. Things are being done in this direction, and we consider in the Communist Party that they can be of greater depth, of greater scope, and that it is important to continue working from the institutions of the state and society with the popular movement, the popular power, as we say here in Venezuela, with the participation of blue collars, peasants, the community, co-proprietors, and workers in general, of the popular movement, the sectors of the intelligentsia, the middle class, the scientific and technical sectors. It is very important to enhance the role of science and technology in our country. Progress is being made in that direction, but these efforts must be deepened.
Se viene avanzando en esa dirección, pero hay que profundizar esos esfuerzos.
Venezuela, the government of President Nicolás Maduro, has been battling the pandemic with measures. First, one was to assume at the time, we could say timely, the decisions of social control, separation, social dialogue, or physical distancing. The president carried it out on time, as well as measures to maintain a lockdown, which is an important measure that the government of President Maduro took in March 2020. We can say it was in a timely manner. That, along with other realities, which are the realities that have been beyond the government itself, well, the coercive and isolation measures resulted in that. When the pandemic happened, international flights in Venezuela were scarce, because that must also be noted. The presence of tourists and international visitors was reduced to a minimum. The pandemic, along with the unilateral and coercive measures of the U.S. administration, had forced isolation on the country, with little presence of international visitors. That is an element that must be taken into account.
De visitantes internacionales. Eso es un elemento que hay que tener en cuenta.
And third, Something we value immensely has been the solidarity of the government of the People's Republic of China. Actually, the Russian Federation has also played an important role. The comrades of Cuba, of the Cuban Revolution, have played an important role in solidarity with our country. It is this immense solidarity with our country, but solidarity with the government and the Cuban people. The Cuban government and people historically have helped the peoples of Latin America and have developed internal processes aimed at meeting the social, political, and social demands of the Cuban people amid the murderous blockade. This is the same thing today the Communist Party of Venezuela condemns and rejects as an attempt of the U.S. administration to subvert the internal situation in Cuba. Our solidarity with the Cuban people, our solidarity with the government of Cuba.
Nuestra solidaridad con el pueblo cubano, nuestra solidaridad con el gobierno de la República de Cuba.
China has 4 decades of reform and opening up that has enabled the country to enjoy development, which is a right, a human right, every human on this world should have. Now, how would you reflect upon China's approach? How do you see your country's possible path so that people could enjoy development?
Bueno, desde el Partido Comunista de Venezuela,
We at the Communist Party of Venezuela believe that the Venezuelan government and the state should deepen processes of building strategic alliances at the international level. Strategic alliances that must protect the sovereignty of the country and must be obviously beneficial for those with whom the government, the Venezuelan state, makes international alliances, guaranteeing the sovereignty of Venezuela over natural resources and production. There must be agreements that guarantee technology transfer, that guarantee the scientific and technological advance of our country.
que garanticen el avance científico y tecnológico de nuestro país.
In other words, the Communist Party of Venezuela is aware that nowadays no country, no lonely economy can develop for the benefit of its people. This is also the case in Venezuela. Then, international alliances that maintain sovereignty over natural resources and our production processes is a very important factor for us, along with other aspects related to what we consider fundamental in the development of an economy that also contributes to the revolutionary transformation of Venezuelan society. This is related with a much more direct, effective, and active participation of workers, the communal councils, the communes, the peasant sectors, and obviously in general, the intelligentsia, the science and technology sectors.
De la intelectualidad y los sectores de la ciencia y la tecnología.
A comprehensive plan that considers these aspects, in which the rights of workers are at the center of those objectives. We propose development to benefit our people. We propose development to benefit the working class in the city and in the countryside. And if the efforts we make fundamentally benefit capitalist sectors, they are obviously not in the right direction, according to the Communist Party of Venezuela.
No está en la dirección correcta, consideramos, en el Partido Comunista.